Welcome back to The Watch, and we are back to discussing House of the Dragon, this time episode 5 of season 2. A bit of a slower episode this time round, which you would expect because there is a lot of fallout to kind of cover in regards to how the last episode ended. People died, decisions need to be made, and it just continues to be really high quality TV. I enjoyed the episode. And although that's probably not very surprising, I, again, don't want to underplay the significance of that in regards to having a truly good, consistently well-written show with the slop that we usually get. And so it's just a relief and a joy to have something that you can enjoy consistently that can distract you from some of the troubles that are happening in the world, which, yes, I've been following very closely, but that's one of the purposes of entertainment, fantasy, pop culture, escapism, is to try and get away from the crap that's happening in the world and find some, escape and enjoy, and something to enjoy. And that's what this show is offering, and that's what we're doing here now. We're here to discuss a good show, things that I like, things that I notice, speculation, and I hope you will enjoy yourselves as you join me here as well. And the show continues to pay attention to the details, and there's just small details, things that play into larger events. The opening of the episode shows a lot of rotting food and just people actually still fighting over that rotten food, and that's some desperate kind of stuff right there. Also, and that's just the intro to something more significant that we've been wanting to find out from the last episode. Is the king, Aegon, dead or not? And look, they played it well because they were doing a bit of a bait where they were showing it looked like he was dead, and they had a crate that basically looks like a coffin, really, and who is in there? I when I saw that, I was like, if the king is in there, doesn't that mean he's dead? But then what they revealed does actually make sense as to why the king would be in there if he is. Because I was also thinking, could it be Rhaenyra's body that they dug out and are now, going to take back as some type of trophy or something? And so it's just one of those small little techniques that they've done to cause you to be drawn in and wonder, well, is he dead or is he not? It turns out that the king actually is in there, and he almost seems dead, but he's like on the verge of death, and he is barely alive, which we find out when they bring that, crate, coffin thing into the castle. Is it, reasonable that he's alive after what happened to him? Possibly. People will be referring to the Valyrian steel armor, if that protected him. And, my understanding of Valyrian steel is not necessarily magic. It's a really remarkable type of steel that's really strong, resistant to fire, to my understanding. But, look, it has some type of magical properties that we see when it's used against the White Walkers stuff. Would it absorb massive amounts of kinetic energy on impact? I think it would protect someone perhaps a bit more from fire, not necessarily melt. But I'm not really convinced that Valyrian steel armor would enable someone to survive such a fall. There's a discussion to be had that maybe the dragon broke his fall a bit, that the wings caused some type of, parachute effect. It's like, okay, well, I can go with it, but all right, it is alive. Oh, it's pushing, reason, but okay, yep, all right, I'll go with it. And look, it's not injured. He hasn't come out of it unscathed. They make it feel painful because they show that the armor is basically melted to his skin is melted to the inside of the armor. Really horrifying, though. Again, I've got questions. I'm a medieval enthusiast. I know how armor and what you wear and stuff like that. He would have been wearing his arming double underneath, and like, the fire wouldn't have been so consuming that it would have burnt away the entire arming doublet underneath, and sometimes they're layered and padded, right? And I would suspect that the king's one was. For the fire to have burnt out all of that underneath, okay, and then so much so that then the metal is burning his skin, where his skin is melted to the steel, like he would be a crisp, he would be ashes. And I'm not saying he couldn't have been under a lot of pain, because could the arming doublet have caught fire? Usually made out of linen, not the most flammable type of material, under intensity, but I think the arming doublet certainly could have been charred and singed greatly, and the armour almost burning that and stuff, but it's just one of those interesting things. For the dramatic effect of having them literally have to cut the armour off of his skin, it was like, oh. And I don't know how many people would be aware that it wouldn't have been, the metal would not have been resting on his skin, and it wouldn't have just been a single like thin bit of cloth separating that there would have been padding and other things, but still it had a visual impact, so I can understand why they went with it. One of the things I found interesting is not many people are showing remorse, though it's more concerning because it looked like he was dead. And the Queen Alicent, it's not Regent, it's Dowager. The Queen Dowager, she asked, is he dead? Because he looks like it. And even then, like, she's not showing too much remorse, though when they take him out, yeah, she's at least showing concern. And Aemond just walks upward, and the king is like lying on the bed, and he knows that that's his time. His whole tactic was basically get him killed, but if not killed, he can now be the king regent, ruling in the stead, which is what he wants. Complicated stuff. Like, in terms of, when I say complicated, I'm wondering about Aemond's motivations. What do you guys think are his motivations? Is it just power? See, I'm not necessarily sure it's just power. Aemond has always been about duty, you know? When he was having the conversation with his brother when they were younger, it's like, I'd marry my sister for the good of the realm, for the duty of the realm and stuff. And he knows that Aegon is a lousy king. And so he also hates Aemond because Aemond, made fun of him, and Aegon made fun of him, and Aemond clearly has a vengeful streak against people that make fun of him. Chomp, right? And so, yeah, I'd say that plays a part in it. I do think, though, perhaps that he also might be have done such a vicious thing, or basically try and murder his brother, because it could be, from his mind, the good of the realm. It's not to excuse anything, of course. It's just good that you can speculate about these things, because it shows a more complex character. And isn't that fun? Isn't that good when we got a good show where you can speculate about this type of stuff? And that's what we've been doing with a lot of these House of the Dragon reviews, discussions. It's just to kind of speculate, because it has the depth to do that. And it's refreshing that we have a show that has the quality where we can even go in and dive in like that. So, Alicent confronts Cole and asks him about what happened. And I found this really interesting, because Cole, how much does he know? He saw Aemond with the sword over Aegon. He knows Aemond was late coming to the ambush in the battle. I don't think he knows that Aemond intentionally delayed his arrival in the hopes that Aegon would die. The attack that Aemond led with in the battle, where Aegon got hit with the fire, he doesn't have confirmation that was intentionally targeted. It's the chaos of battle. What was it, like 900 men of his own died in that battle? That's a lot of people dead. On the scale of medieval armies, that is huge. In case you don't know, medieval armies historically were actually, they could get big, but they weren't as big as some of the armies of the classical period, where you had larger empires like the Roman Empire and even before then Greece and wars and stuff like that because of the feudal nature. Anyway, it's just, 900 men dying. Oof, that would hurt. But Cole's perspective here, he both seems to be more cautious of Aemond. Does he have more respect for him? Because it's like, okay, this guy's prepared to do whatever it needs to be to win the war. He is also kind of allied with Aemond because they've been planning together how to wage the war. And so the fact that Cole backs Aemond's claim to be the regent makes complete sense. But it is interesting to think about what could have impacted his thoughts about that from the fallout and the real concerns he might have that Aemond just attempted to murder his brother. So they show Cole being hesitant about speaking plainly what he saw. And because when Alicent just flat asks him, did Aemond have a hand in what happened to Aegon, he says, I could not say. Can't say. But he doesn't mention that, Aemond was standing over him with a sword and it looked like he was going to off him. So, look, we're not far into the episode, and just look, the discussion we've been able to have, right? It's a sign of a good show, isn't it? Without falling into massive contradictions and bad writing and stuff. So the next scene is seeing Rhaenyra dealing with a fallout as well. Rhaenys died, they've lost a dragon, and they've also lost a castle. And this episode is kind of like Rhaenyra trying to figure out what to do next. She's at a bit of a loss. People are questioning her authority. She's questioning her ability to wage war as a woman. That comes up in this scene, but it comes up multiple times throughout the episode. Her response, I found this interesting because my first thought in the response was actually addressed in the episode. Like, good! Because she says this to someone saying, look, you're a woman, all right? War is the realm of men, essentially. And she says to the man, there's been peace in our lifetime. You've seen no more battles than I have. My reaction to that is like, yeah, but the guys have been training for war most of their lives. Just because they haven't seen battle doesn't mean that they would be better equipped to handle the tactics and logistics and command of warfare more than Rhaenyra. I'm glad it's addressed later on, where Rhaenyra says that the men were raised with a sword their whole lives and she was given her father's cup. Yes, good. Like, she acknowledges that she doesn't have the training, but she still thinks she's just as qualified to lead the war efforts as someone who has more training. That's where but that goes to her own arrogance and ignorance, which I think is in line with her character. She also doesn't acknowledge the fact that she was not particularly devoted or devout in her tutelage. She skipped out on lessons. She was making wrong choices. And I do wonder if she sought after being trained in the sword, like actually genuinely pushed for it. And even if Viserys said no, going to one of the Kingsguard, Cole was loyal to her at the time. Cole would have taught her, right? She could have. If she wanted to, I really think she could have learnt sword and the concepts of warfare. And she's kind of just handballing, which is deflecting responsibility to the fact that, yeah, you don't have as much training as a man. And she's saying, it's because no one taught me. If she wanted to, I think she could have. She just kind of not only accepted the more feminine tutelage and upbringing she was thrust upon her, she's complaining about it. And she even shirked that. She even wasn't as a, devoted student in the types of tutelage that was offered her. So once again, Rhaenyra, in my mind, is showing just some of her naivete and her hubris, really, her lack of qualifications. Because even though the Greens look really bad, okay, I don't forget that Rhaenyra at the time, who should be, the king, so who should be the heir, right? Rhaenyra was not a good choice for being the heir to the throne. Now I know things are different, and I really like Jace. Jace even does more in this episode to make him he's just a solid, honourable guy, Jace. And so if he's going to be the heir after, Rhaenyra, but everything is so muddied now. It's just like we're at a point, I don't even have my sword, red or green, with me, right? Because I don't care. There's so many years, and it's just a mess. And everything is just headed towards disaster. And they kind of say that, like Cole admits, do you understand what's ahead of us? This is going to be a loss of life. And it was actually a really interesting line he said to Alicent, where he backs Aemond to be king, and he says, to Alicent, I spared you of what is to come. That's an interesting line. It shows that he has some mercy, because I kind of agree with him. And Alicent is an idiot to think that she wants to bloody her hands so much to get involved to this level. Why does she want to be the regent once again? I think it's because she thinks that she'll do a better, job. And maybe she thinks she could seek a more peaceful resolution, but she hasn't shown any evidence that her choices would result in a more peaceful resolution at all. So I do find it interesting that she was so determined to become the regent when the question gets raised. They do an interesting comment in the council with Rhaenyra where they say Vhagar is depleted after the battle. Is that in the books? Dragons after a fight, are they out of commission really for a couple of days because they need to, replenish their fire stores? I wouldn't have thought so. I know that they're probably hungry and would be eating more, and they mentioned that dragons during wartime eat more, and that makes sense. But the fact that a dragon could be depleted after a battle, rest, I guess, but not being available at the desperate need to defend the castle, because they even say, you could strike out there at King's Landing, and I was just not sure I'm sold on that reasoning. Next promising thing that I have, wrote note of is just Jace's decision to sort out passage with the phrase. And look, it's being proactive and stuff. The reasoning he gives is that the Starks then will be able to get easier passage down into the Riverlands and help them out in that fight, because the issue is Rhaenyra doesn't have a ground army. Essentially, yet. That's what Daemon is trying to raise, and the things that are happening there are interesting. And so Jace's thoughts is secure passage of the phrase, get the Starks there. The reasoning is good. I'm just wondering why no one has thought of it before that. That seems like a pretty obvious thing then. If you have an army with the Starks, they're committed and they're on the march downways, and they'll get there quicker by passage through the phrase, castle that crosses that river. Why hasn't anyone thought about it, yet? And they're kind of portraying Jace as, he's the smart one. And I personally, this is a criticism, right? I hate when writers do this, where in trying to make a character look particularly intelligent, they have to make everyone else look ignorant when it's a more obvious thing. The logistics that would be the most direct thing. It's oh yeah, we got an army, we need an army, we have an army coming down from the Starks, they need to get here sooner. How do they get sooner? Well, patch through the phrase. That would be one of the first things. And so they could have still done it, right? By making Jace come up with a clever solution, by having the issue be that there's something with the phrase that they can't address as a conflict or whatever. Well, the phrase have already said no to them using it, and Jace thinks of something more outside the box to petition the phrase to let them join their side. And then that would have been achieved. But unfortunately, this was one of the kind of lazy options that writers will sometimes do, is just making everyone look dumb and ignorant to make one character look smarter. Look, doesn't happen often. The show is still really top quality writing. That was just one of those things was the scene where Daemon is talking with, I think it's the Brackens. I do get them mixed up, but I think the Brackens are the yellow ones and the Blackwoods are the ones who wear the black with red accents and stuff. And Daemon, it's just a good scene, right? Daemon threatens to burn him, and they basically like, yeah, we choose fire over, joining the Blackwoods, right? And he called his bluff because I was expecting Daemon to just fireball them, but he doesn't. And so I was thinking that was almost outside of Daemon's character, but Daemon justifies it. Right when, the scene directly after, he says they would rather burn than succumb. Exactly the type of men I need. And so Daemon actually kind of respects that. He showed the balls. And then, so Daemon hints to the Blackwood guy that says, you need to do some dirty stuff to convince them. Every man has their price. Do the thing that a king can't be seen doing. And later on we find out the result of this is that the Blackwoods basically kidnap the children and wives of the Brackens to coerce them to join. And it seems like it works. Really dark strategy. But then it backfires at the end. They kind of accuse Daemon of having orchestrated. Though that scene was a little confusing as to who was necessarily there. I thought it was the Blackwoods. And I still think it is, but then they say something that defends the Bracken. So I even rewatched it and I didn't fully get it. Still, okay, so that's Daemon's strategy here. It reminds me of the meme, it's a bold strategy. Let's see how it works out. And Daemon, of course, is still under the effects of... It really looks like he's being drugged by the witch. There's that weird sex scene thing. Targaryens, man. It turns out it's his mum. It's a flashback. Although, I speculated last episode that with the drugging, that he is seeing visions of people when he sees he sees a real person, but he sees a vision of someone else in their place. They showed that last episode. And to me, that's them hinting that this sex scene isn't an actual... He's hallucinating who is having sex with, but is actually doing the deed with someone that is not seeing, and I think it's the witch. I think that's she has a scheme plotting that involves seducing him. And I think it might have been starting to be played out this episode. So we get to see the Eyrie. We see a lot of castles, actually. There's some broader, wider shots of castles. We see the Eyrie, we see Dragonstone, we see Driftmark, we see, I forget what they're called, but, not the Stepstones, but the castles crossing the river. So many of these castles. Look great. And the Eyrie looks incredible. I think we see the Bloody Gates. And an intro to the discussion with... it's... Targaryens, their family lines. It's the daughter of Daemon, who is also the daughter of Rhaenyra's daughter, and the family connections are just... Anyway, so she has been sent to the Eyrie, and that's where the discussion happens about trying to get the Eyrie to join them. They don't have a dragon, and it hints at... possible alliance. It's more of a setup scene in my mind. That's what I'm seeing from that. One of the next scenes is when Rhaenyra does acknowledge that, my father didn't prepare me to fight, though she doesn't take responsibility for any, action she could have taken to try and prepare herself, because she didn't want to prepare very well as the queen. She's talking with the White Worm. I forget her name. It's interesting that she's confiding so personally with her when, it's like that seems to happen fast, but, argument could be made she doesn't have anyone else to confide in. Daemon isn't really trustworthy yet. And, well, by the way, Daemon reveals, just in this episode, he basically plans to usurp the throne. He is going to take King's Landing, and he says, and he already hinted it previously in the episode, but he says that, Rhaenyra can join me at my side or not, basically. So Rhaenyra's concerns that Daemon might not be raising an army for her, justified. And I do wonder if Daemon's kind of decisions to... Because it's a matter of escalation ever since he got to Harrenhal. First he says, call me your grace. Now he's saying, call me your king. And now he's just blatantly saying that he plans to set himself up as the king. All happening when he got to Harrenhal. Part of the... And so I wonder, is that the witch's plan? She is trying to manipulate Daemon to take the throne, to usurp Rhaenyra, and then have a child by Daemon, which would mean her child would be heir to the throne. If Daemon disowns all the other heirs by Rhaenyra, and he claims, I haven't read the book, and I don't know what'll happen, but speculation. Interesting. Rhaenyra confiding in the White Worm, and this is a bit of a setup to dirty tactics, it seems like. White Worm basically says that there are other ways to fight a war, and the people are upset, and that you can it seems like she's going to be stoking the fires to make things far, far worse. Interesting, because if their intent is to try and stop suffering and everything, but they're going to make things worse in King's Landing, causing more suffering to try and make things unstable. It's like dirty stuff. But if the White Worm's concern is, I'm worried about the people. Yet we can manipulate the people, get them more upset, and assumingly they're going to get them more upset by making things worse for them. Yeah, you love the people, right? So I'm not necessarily a fan of this character. I think she's consistent so far. Not nearly as interesting as other characters, but depending on what her actions cause here, she could be a real vile person. Not many people who aren't necessarily vile in the show. Granted, but hey, Jace is a good bloke. Oh yeah, so then we have the hallucinating sex scene with Daemon. He drops that "you should dress me as my king." I do like that steward guy in Harrenhal. He's just he's trying to manage stuff. He has to obey Daemon, and yeah, he's cool. I like him. There's good tension in the King Regent Council when they're determining who is going to be regent. Plays out great. The discussion is, logical, and I do find it interesting that Alicent puts herself forward. But when they all settle on Aemond, it's a great moment where I think Aemond leans forward and grabs, it must be just the Stone of the King, represents his authority and his position on the council, and he just gives Alicent a look. The actor that does Aemond, he does a good job. That was a menacing look. And he got what he wants. And the line from his sister, was it worth it? It's just all really, really good writing, good character work. They show more strain upon the people. Next scene. And because this is following on from Aemond's decision to seal up the city to stop people from getting in and out. And Alicent reacts like, that's the horrible, wrong decision. Don't have enough real context to figure out, is it or not, from a strategic point of view. And probably is strategic, but in terms of getting things running, keeping things running, getting the army supplied and all of that, while Alicent could be cringing by the fact that she knows it's going to cause all the people to turn against him. But why doesn't she speak up? She still has a voice on the council. I find it interesting that it's almost like a reaction that, all right, you got the role instead of me, so I am going to purposely let you make bad decisions so you can suffer from your own bad decisions, even though she has the power to counsel still and get her, I'm not saying Aemond would have listened, but he might have. The fact that she kept silent, I just find it interesting about her character as well. Goes in line with her character where she's a bit more selfish than she likes to let on. So the next scene is when Cole explains to Alicent why he didn't vote for her. And honestly, I think it's just Cole has done some really crappy things, yet I think people should give some of his character where he does show some mercy. That line where he says, I spared you. I spared you what you have to do. And that is aware of how bloody it's going to be. It's good line and good character work. Now, Daemon was already hinting at going to call me your king, but then this is where he has the scene talking with the steward of Harrenhal. When I take King's Landing, Rhaenyra is free to rule at my side. Daemon is basically going off the reservation, and I do think it's part of the manipulation and drugging that he's been getting. Very interesting. So, part of what's also been going on is Corlys is mourning the loss of his wife, and the show has already been foreshadowing something that's happening with Driftmark. We've seen the guy that is actually one of his, illegitimate children, hinting at succession. He is battling who to name to be the heir. He tries to name one of Daemon's daughters, which is the daughter of his daughter, his grandchild. She says no and says, I am blood and fire. Driftmark must pass to salt and sea. Good line, good wordplay, right? And she's there, offering the role of the Hand of the King. Rhaenyra has offered Corlys to be Hand of the King, and he is hesitant because he's like, I've lost so much to, this. He's kind of getting fed up. I think he will still accept the role. And again, setting up. And so this episode has kind of gone back to solid, character work, the scenes that should happen as a fallout of, the big events, and back to setting up again, but it's still just as intriguing. Really enjoyable still. Rhaenyra reveals that she kind of knows that Daemon might be turning against her. She asks one of the guys in the council, the guy that's been questioning her, is Daemon raising an army for me or for him? And she's sending him to find out. Again, that's setting up a serious conflict, and I'm interested if Daemon might just kill him when he questions or calls Daemon out on it. So the episode doesn't end on a really strong note, just an interesting note where Rhaenyra is wondering what to do. Jace returns. They talk about, the Freys will join him if they give them Harrenhal after victory. But they raise the problem that they don't have enough dragons, and then Jace kind of seeds the idea that, well, do you actually need to bear the name Targaryen to be a direct bloodline to ride a dragon? They kind of have an answer, because it is an illegitimate child, but the Targaryens have also married non-Targaryens, clearly, and been in the royal line. Anyway, so it ends off with them considering that they can find descendants of the Targaryen line that don't bear the name, more distant relatives. And it shouldn't even be that distant, honestly, because even if you go back just 2-3 generations and find the right cousins and uncles and stuff, there should be a good number of Targaryen blood around that could potentially be dragon riders. And now they're willing to consider getting dragon riders that are actually outside of the royal line. It's interesting that the Valyrian line, Corlys Valyrian, their house has dragons, even though they're not necessarily royal line. They're just a very powerful house, but they're descendants of old Valyria, so that kind of explains it. But yeah, it's just like, I understand why perhaps the royal line hasn't considered the possibility. They probably have considered the possibility, but they never entertained actually doing it because they want to keep power to themselves in the royal Targaryen house. As soon as they give dragons to people outside that house, what if they then decide to take the dragons and use them against them? Which very well might actually be what ends up happening in the future plot of this story. Wait and see, but I just really love that you can play with the pieces and see, okay, if this one goes here, this could be a potential result. And that's what we're seeing there. And the episode ends with the dum-dum-dum kind of do-do thing of them going to seek more dragon riders. Not the most powerful moment in the episode for me. Some of the more powerful stuff and interesting stuff is the fact that Daemon is willing to almost usurp, or he's planning to usurp Rhaenyra's authority, and is determined basically to set himself up as king. That's the big kind of story progress that happens in this episode that I feel has some of the most weight. But a whole heap of just really interesting stuff. Aemond now being King Regent. They call him Prince Regent, but he's the Regent, which he's acting as king, right? It's what he wanted, and I'm interested to see what happens. That's what's so great about the show, because is he going to be overly violent, overly aggressive, will he show people wrong? I feel he's going to be much more cutthroat, but he has shown that reasonable, logical, I will do my duty side. So, we will get to see what happens. The show continues to maintain its quality throughout. Great episode, characters consistent, and the story progresses logically and in a very engaging way. Doesn't feel like there was any wasted, filler, useless scenes, and dialogue, top tier. The show continues to be great, and it's fun to talk about. So share your thoughts in the comments. I'm interested to hear, have that discussion with you guys about what you thought of the episode, what you think is going to happen. What do you think? Do you think the hallucinated sex scene was actually Daemon doing the deed with someone, with the witch, right? I think it was. But share your thoughts in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next discussion review of House of the Dragon when the next episode drops. So as always, stay on watch.